Welcome to People and Platforms, the space where we explore how people and systems shape one another in the modern workplace. I'm Carlo-Marcel Dube, and today I want to talk about something that's both deeply personal and professionally urgent: the mental health of HR professionals. Because let's be honest, HR is tired. Not I need a nap tired. I mean, emotionally drained, compassion fatigued, and quietly breaking inside while trying to hold the organization together. A new 2025 HR Mental Wellbeing Report from the UK found that 73% of HR professionals are experiencing symptoms of depression. 75% are struggling with anxiety, and 63% are very likely to be burnt out. Now, I know that's UK data, but as someone working in HR here in Southern Africa, I can tell you those numbers don't feel far from home, because across organizations, we are seeing the same signs: burnout, disengagement, and emotional numbness in the very people expected to model well-being. HR, by its nature, carries what psychologists call emotional labor, the constant management of your own emotions to remain professional while dealing with everyone else's storms. You might spend your morning consoling an employee who's just lost a parent, your afternoon defending a disciplinary decision to a furious manager, and by evening, you are the one drafting redundancy letters for colleagues you have grown to love, and yet you must remain calm, empathetic, neutral, and yes, confidential. David Souza from the CIPD calls this the invisible tax of professionalism. He says HR people are required to suppress their emotions to act as expected, and that suppression leads to exhaustion, to anxiety, and eventually burnout. During COVID-19, HR teams like 16-hour days, drafting policies at midnight, managing fear, grief, and remote logistics, while their own families were scared and struggling. But nobody ever asked, "Are you okay?" We are the ones checking in on everyone, but no one checks in on us. Let's sit with the data for a moment. In the 2025 report, 44% of HR professionals met clinical levels of depression, compared to around 16% in the general population. 38% showed clinical anxiety, compared to 23% in the general population. 63% reported low well-being, and 42% said they are thinking of leaving the profession entirely. That's almost half of HR professionals wanting out. Could it be any different for us? Now, if you're in HR in Southern Africa, you already know the contributing factors. You are probably juggling 3 jobs in one, maybe 2 informal. You have 2 side hustles. There are budget cuts, endless reporting cycles, performance reviews, disciplinary hearings, wellness weeks, and somewhere in there, you are supposed to meditate. Someone once told me, "I spend my days promoting mental health programs for staff, but when I get home, I sit in the car for 20 minutes before I can walk inside. I'm too drained to even talk to my kids." That's burnout. And the irony is, many of us have internalized the belief that strong HR people don't break. We tell ourselves, this is the job. It's not about me, it's about you, because you can't pour from an empty cup. Not indefinitely. The report identified the top 3 sources of HR stress. Number 1 was excessive workload, which accounted for 50%, and poor management, which accounted for 41%, and lack of support, which was around 29%. Now, those first 2 are painfully familiar. Excessive workload, because every audit, every emergency appeal brings urgent HR work. We are told you are in the people team, make it happen. But with limited staff, limited budgets, and unrealistic timelines, HR becomes the organizational shock absorber. Poor management. Because HR often cleans up after poor leadership, someone at the top makes a rash decision, and it's HR that must communicate it properly or make it palatable. We absorb leadership dysfunction and turn it into policy. Sometimes there's even lack of support, which is the silent killer. 87% of HR respondents said they feel unsupported in their own well-being. Someone that I coached last year said, our directors expect us to drive wellness, but when we tried to organize supervision sessions for HR, they say there's no budget. Apparently, the well-being budget doesn't include HR. That's the paradox of HR. You're both the caregiver and the crisis manager, and yet the least cared for in general. No one thinks about you and your well-being. So, understand this. When HR well-being collapses, the cost isn't just personal, it's organizational. The report found that 23% of HR professionals took time off in the past year because of mental health challenges. Those who left, who felt unsupported, were more likely to take sick leave or consider quitting. Let that sink in. When HR is unwell, the organization loses its stabilizer. Think about your own team. If the person who manages grievances, disciplinary cases, recruitment, and culture initiatives is mentally exhausted, what happens to the quality of decisions? What happens to empathy? What happens to fairness, to integrity? You get compliance, not compassion. You get process and not people. The emphasis on policy and not people. And the ripple effect is real. Tired HR teams breed tired organizations. Culture suffers, performance drops, and the irony is leadership starts blaming poor staff engagement, never realizing it's the system itself that is unwell. As Faye Wallis, host of HR Coffee Time, said, taking care of HR isn't just the right thing to do, it's essential for sustainable success. Let's talk about how burnout actually shows up. The 2025 report used the burnout assessment tool and found that 56% of HR professionals feel mentally exhausted most of the time. 31% struggle to find enthusiasm for their work. 37% can't concentrate properly. Does it sound familiar? Burnout isn't just fatigue. It's the erosion of purpose. It's when you stop caring, not because you're lazy, but because you have cared for too long without refilling your emotional tank. Someone said, I used to love onboarding new staff, hearing their stories, seeing their excitement. Now I just process contracts. I don't even remember faces. That's burnout. And it's dangerous because when compassion turns mechanical, HR stops being human. Now, let's be honest. In African contexts, we don't always talk about mental health openly. There's stigma. We call it stress or say, I'm just tired, instead of naming depression or anxiety. But the reality is, we're human. Yeah? We have limits, even in HR. And culturally, HR professionals often carry an additional burden, especially women. They're expected to be both emotionally strong and endlessly nurturing, in the office and at home. So the mental load never ends. It's a loop. Sometimes you imagine that at work, you're everyone's counselor. At home, you're everyone's parent. There's no way you can collapse. This is why support systems matter, not just EAPs or employee assistant programs or workshops, but real structured supervision, spaces where HR can talk about the trauma of hearing harassment cases, the guilt of terminating staff, the pressure of policy decision that impacts livelihoods, because these things accumulate quietly, invisibly, until someone breaks. So what do we do? The report proposes a multi-level model for change, and I believe it applies perfectly to our African organizations too. The first level is organizational transformation. We need leadership that recognizes HR's emotional labor and creates real support systems, not token wellness weeks. That means balanced workloads, fair recognition, and well-being budgets that include HR staff. There is also the need for professional reform. As a field, HR must define well-being standards for itself, just like health professionals do. Why not have HR supervision frameworks across NGOs and corporates and private companies? I mean, imagine quarterly reflective sessions where HR officers process their emotional load safely. Individual responsibility is also paramount. Yes, we must also take ownership. That means setting boundaries, saying no when needed, taking leave using the available employee assistance programs, and seeking therapy without shame. It also means building resilience, yes, not as a buzzword, but as a discipline. And let's use our own data, our exit interviews, absenteeism records, and engagement surveys already tell the story. If HR is leading this analysis, we should also be looking inward, identifying where our own teams are struggling. Because if we don't do it, no one will do it for us. So, my fellow HR professionals listening, whether you are in Harare, Lusaka, Nairobi, or London, remember this. You are not the organization's counselor-in-chief. You are a human being, deserving of the same care you give to others. And for our senior leaders, if your HR team is burnt out, your entire organizational immune system is compromised, support them, budget for them, listen to them. Because the health of HR is the health of the organization. We often tell employees, take care of yourself so you can take care of others. Maybe it's time HR lived that truth too. I am Carlo-Marcel Dube, and this has been People in Platforms. Let's keep the conversation going, because resilience shouldn't mean suffering in silence. You need help too. Cheers.